You demanded it, so here it is. Part 2 of the most hated towns in the Sunshine State, and honestly, Part 2 might be worse. This time we've got a school that buried its own students in the woods, a town built on Coca-Cola money that lost it all, a perfect Disney-designed suburb that got its first murder from a case nobody expected, and a city so corrupt the FBI needed its own filing cabinet just for the mayors. If Part 1 made you never want to visit Florida again, Part 2 might make you never want to leave your house. Let's get into it. Number 12. Fort Pierce. When people think Treasure Coast, they picture manatees and sunrise fishing charters. Fort Pierce, named for a 19th century army post, sits right in the middle of that postcard and quietly ranks as one of the more dangerous small cities in the entire country. The violent crime rate here runs close to double the national average, and by some counts, Fort Pierce logs one of the highest murder rates of any reporting city in the U.S. relative to its size. Poverty, drug activity, and gang violence are the usual suspects cited by local reporting. Drive a few blocks in any direction, and the postcard disappears fast. Number 11. Riviera Beach. Riviera Beach shares a zip code with Singer Island, where oceanfront condos sell for over $1 million, and the median household pulls in close to $94,000 a year. Cross under the bridge into Riviera Beach proper, and that number collapses. The city's violent crime rate runs nearly triple the national average, driven by unemployment, under-resourced schools, and decades of disinvestment. Same city limits. Two entirely different Floridas, separated by about a quarter-mile of asphalt. Number 10. Century. Population 1,700 and shrinking. Century sits at the very top of the Panhandle, close enough to Alabama that half its economy used to cross state lines. It was built on timber and lumber money starting in 1900, the kind of one-industry town that thrives right up until the industry leaves. It left decades ago. Median household income sits around $25,000, and roughly a third of residents live below the poverty line. There's no scandal here, no viral headline. Just a slow, quiet economic flatline nobody outside Escambia County ever hears about. Number 9. Apalachicola. For most of the last century, Apalachicola Bay produced nearly all of Florida's oysters. Then came the 2010 Gulf oil spill, a brutal drought, and a decade-long legal war with Georgia over river water. Florida sued, claiming upstream use was starving the bay. The Supreme Court sided with Georgia, ruling Florida couldn't prove it. By 2020, wild oyster harvesting was banned outright through the end of 2025. An entire fishing culture generations deep put on pause by a court case it lost. Number 8. Perry. Perry's nickname used to be the town that smells like money because the sulfur stench drifting off the paper mill meant paychecks were still coming. Procter & Gamble built that mill in 1954 and started dumping up to 50 million gallons of waste a day into the Fen Holloway River, turning it into what locals called a cesspool. A quarter of the town's entire economy depended on that plant. In 2023, weeks after Hurricane Idalia flattened the region, Georgia Pacific closed it for good. 2,000 jobs gone overnight. Nobody in Perry is complaining about the smell anymore. They'd take it back in a heartbeat. If you're just now finding out how weird your own state is, hit that subscribe button. I do this every week, and we are only halfway through part 2. Number 7. Everglades City. In April 1983, a Collier County deputy estimated that up to 225 of the town's 534 residents were involved in marijuana smuggling. On July 7th of that year, over 200 federal agents sealed off the only road into town at 5 a.m. and arrested 28 people. By some accounts, the majority of the town's adult men were either arrested or under active investigation. Everglades City wasn't a town with a drug problem. For a while, smuggling basically was the town. Number 6. Piney Point. Just outside Palmetto in Manatee County sits an old phosphate plant holding nearly 400 million gallons of wastewater behind a leaking containment wall. In March 2021, that wall started failing. Engineers warned a full collapse could send a 20-foot wall of water through the area within minutes. Over 300 homes were evacuated. Crews pumped 33 million gallons a day into Tampa Bay just to relieve the pressure, triggering a massive red tide bloom that killed marine life for miles. The dam held. Barely. Number 5. Immokalee. Immokalee has been called, without exaggeration, ground zero for modern slavery in America. Between the 1990s and 2008, federal prosecutors won at least 7 major cases against Immokalee area employers for holding farm workers in involuntary servitude, workers monitored by armed guards, beaten and held in debt bondage inside a state most people associate with theme parks. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers, founded here, helped crack those cases open. The tomatoes on your plate may have passed through this town, so did people who were owned by other people, inside Florida, within most of our lifetimes. Number 4, Quincy. In the 1920s, a local banker convinced half the town to buy Coca-Cola stock. By the eve of World War II, Quincy had the highest per capita income of any city in America. Roughly 24 locals sat on quiet Coke fortunes while barely mentioning it to their neighbors. That money built a college fund and a cultural center that still exists today. It did not save the town. Quincy's poverty rate now sits close to 27%, nearly double the state average. Somewhere in town, someone's grandmother is still holding original shares, and someone's grandson still can't find steady work. Number 3, Mariana. The Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys operated in Mariana from 1900 to 2011 as a state juvenile reform school. Between 2012 and 2016, forensic anthropologists from the University of South Florida exhumed 55 unmarked graves on the property. Nearly 100 boys are documented to have died there. Survivors of it, who call themselves the White House Boys, describe decades of beatings inside a small building on campus that they nicknamed after its color. Some victims were never identified. Mariana spent 100 years as a quiet farming town in the shadow of a building where children were buried in the woods behind it, and almost nobody said a word. I told you part 2 would be worse. We're not done yet. Drop a like if this is holding up, and let's finish the list. Number 2, Celebration. Disney built Celebration in the 1990s as the physical version of a Norman Rockwell painting. Manicured lawns, porch swings, 0 visible power lines. For over a decade, it was cited as one of the safest planned communities in the country. Then, over Thanksgiving weekend in 2010, Celebration recorded its first ever murder. A resident was beaten to death with an axe by an acquaintance after a drunken argument. The case later revealed the victim had a long, disturbing history of abusing children in another state. Disney built a fantasy so convincing that its first real crime felt like a plot hole. The truth underneath was worse than anything in the theme park next door. Number 1, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is one of the most densely packed cities in Florida, a square mile of the Miami metro built largely by Cuban immigrant families chasing something better. It has also earned a reputation, city hall term after city hall term, as one of the most corrupt small governments in the state. In 2011, Mayor Manny Moronio was caught taking cash kickbacks tied to a fake economic development grant scheme and was sentenced to over 3 years in federal prison. He was not the only Sweetwater mayor the FBI has walked out in handcuffs. City Hall here has produced more federal indictments than most towns produce parking tickets. A city named for something sweet, run for years like the well, was already poisoned. That's part 2. 12 more towns, 12 more reasons Florida can't stop making headlines for the wrong reasons. If you want part 3, you know what to do. Like it, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.